This is ArtSense, a podcast focused on educating and informing listeners about the past, present, and future of art. I'm Craig Gould. On today's episode, I speak with Boris Pevzner, co-founder and CEO of LiveArt, a technology company that provides a turnkey, anonymous, peer-to-peer marketplace for fine art. In order to enable informed marketplace decisions, the company has also created a powerful data platform that aggregates art market information that's typically difficult to get to. And now, a conversation about the quest for better liquidity in the art market with LiveArt co-founder and CEO Boris Pevzner. Boris Pevzner, thank you so much for joining me this week on the ArtSense podcast. Boris, you're the co-founder and CEO of LiveArt. For those who don't know what LiveArt does, where do you start to explain to a stranger what all your company does?
Well, first of all, thank you, Craig, for having me on. Very much appreciate it. And yes, LiveArt is something that we're very excited about, and it's really filling the void that currently exists in the art market ecosystem. We believe that collectors want to trade with each other, and artists and galleries want to address kind of a global and rapidly expanding community of collectors. And what's needed, we felt, is this peer-to-peer trading platform that is, number one, private, so protects the identity of the transacting parties, doesn't burn objects, really very sensitive to how the art market operates. A platform that provides real-time information to the trading parties to help them make informed buying decisions. And that's where most of our data products play in helping the trading parties to feel comfortable transacting. The platform also has to have access to the global supply and demand and the ability to match buyers and sellers. So that's a big part of it. And also, given that it's art, it's very personal to people who have it, own it, enjoy it, trade it. So it has to have expert support. It has to have people who understand art, and not just as a generic asset class, but as what it is, a very special set of objects that people feel emotionally invested in, and can help the transacting parties to go through the journey of accessioning or deaccessioning those objects. And it has to be easy to use, so easy to transact, simple logistics, legal support, everything as turnkey as possible. So that's what we have built, and perhaps that's not an elevator pitch, a short answer, but this more or less covers the basics.
It strikes me that a big part of what you're building on is about data. And the art world has long been very guarded about data. And it seems like entire careers have been built around knowing details that other people don't know, and doing these backroom transactions, and people even just having a problem understanding the value or trying to place a value on particular parts of collections because the data is hard to get to. Can you kind of talk about LiveArt's position within that opaque ecosystem and the walls you're kind of pushing up against in the traditional art world by trying to get access to data?
Great question, and really goes to the very core of how we conceptualized the business when we decided to go for it and start it. Because if you think about it in the conceptual way, in the abstract way, the problem that we are tackling seems to be almost impossible, right? It's like what we are saying we're going to do is conduct commerce in items that cannot be shown because of the burning issue, among people who do not know each other and who do not inherently have a trusted relationship with one another. So that's not usually how e-commerce is conducted. E-commerce is usually conducted with items that can be shown, among people who are known to each other and have an implicit trust relationship. So it's a very different type of e-commerce, and it has to be this way because it needs to be tuned, just as you said, to the peculiarities of the art market, right? Because you cannot show the items very widely for a variety of reasons, burning potential danger of burning being one of them. And there is a preference in the market among collectors and other transacting parties to be, if anonymous or to have double blind transactions. It's simply, it's a preference for a variety of reasons. Privacy is big in this market. So then that becomes kind of the conceptual, and then a technical, and then a business issue. How do you conduct commerce for items that cannot be shown among people who don't have a trusted relationship with each other and desire to remain anonymous? So it seems like an intractable problem, but we tackled it systematically. We had to invent, a lot of new technology in the process, and those elements add up to something that makes this possible. So what are those elements? So there is the market data to support trading decisions, to level the playing field, enable informed decision making among the transacting parties. So on that front, we have currently millions, actually tens of millions of auction records. We cover 345,000 or so artists. We have lots of auction houses that we stream live to give people this real-time tracking of what's going on in the market. We have AI algorithms that are sitting on top of it that give you the current market value of every artwork that has ever sold at auction, its full price history, its comparables, market indices for different market segments, etc. We also have non-transactional signals that track value for emerging artists. So for emerging artists who are not well represented by auction results. For them, our AI quantifies the artist's growth. So it tracks the evolution of value, measures the past and future influence of museums and galleries, museum shows, gallery shows, exhibitions, etc. So it's sort of like a cultural significance scoring for those artists that do not have quantitative auction pricing history. So it's kind of like a Bloomberg terminal for art, right? And that's it's there not to just exist as a data product. It's there to support the traders. It's to support people and entities like galleries, dealers, and collectors who are transacting. Give them that extra level of comfort, wrap that they experience into this envelope of market information that helps them to make informed market decisions. So we had to invent that piece, which is quite involved because it has not just the data collection, normalization, and presentation, but also AI algorithms that run on top of that essentially predict the current market value of whatever is being transacted. So that's one. The second thing, and you, I think, very astutely pointed it out as perhaps the most important feature that needs to be addressed or concern from the market perspective is trust, right? So people who are transacting on this platform need to trust each other, and yet they've never met. They're probably going to remain anonymous through the duration of the transaction all the way until completion. So the way that we tackle that is that everybody on the platform who is transacting needs to be KYC'd. So that's this know your customer process that all of the banks, big auction houses use. So that means that everyone knows that the counterparty has been properly evaluated. So a seller knows that the buyer is pre-qualified. The buyer knows that the seller is for real, right? So even though they do not have a personal trusted relationship, they have an implicit trusted relationship because they know that everybody on the platform has been evaluated and KYC'd. So then there is this notion of privacy, right? Double blind transactions where the seller is fully in control at all times about how much information he or she reveals about the item that is being sold. And that's very important. We call this incremental reveal of the item. Actually, this is an idea of all places, from the dating apps. This is how there's lots of technology and academic studies on how people reveal more and more information about themselves as they looking for a match. So same thing here applied to objects, right? Objects also looking for a match, right? For a buyer looking for a seller, an object is looking for a match. And so the idea is the same. You show whatever you need to show to generate interest, and then if that interest is from a qualified counterparty, then you reveal more, and then so on until you reveal everything in what we call a deal room, and then the actual transaction gets formulated and negotiated inside that deal room based on all available information about the object. So that is necessary as well, right, to protect the objects from being burned, to only show them to qualified parties that the seller has approved. And then lastly, this notion of smooth logistics, right? So we have this huge universe of buyers and sellers who are constantly looking for objects that are matching their preferences, or requests that are matching the objects that are being offered on the platform, or something similar to what somebody might want. Then the question is, well, all of that is of course decentralized, and the deal is formulated based on the representations of the sellers. But what about the actual fulfillment? So our logistics model is that it's decentralized discovery and decentralized deal negotiation and deal completion. But then the fulfillment and the actual closing of the deal is centralized, because somebody has to check the condition and authenticity. So we do that through a network of free ports in the US and overseas. So that's how we did it, right? So when you put it all together, then this seemingly daunting problem suddenly becomes tractable, and it becomes tractable in a way that respects all of these conventions and peculiarities of this very unconventional market, which is the art market. So like if you just take an off-the-shelf e-commerce solution and apply it to this market, it's not going to work. I think we all know many examples, and people have tried and failed. You really have to tune it specifically to this market, to its privacy requirements, to its data, hunger, to its logistics peculiarities. It has to be precisely fit for the market. And that's what we've done.
Just listening to you describe the process, it's obvious that there are just so many moving parts. And it just seems like your ability to execute on bringing all of those disparate parts together would be a real asset and a real barrier to entry to someone else trying to come in and replicate your business model. I guess it also strikes me, it doesn't seem like a platform, when you start talking about the matching and the slow reveal, it doesn't seem like necessarily a browsing platform. It seems like people kind of come with a preconception of what they're looking for. Is that true? I mean, do they come to the platform knowing that they're looking for a Francis Bacon, or they're looking for a Goya per se?
I would say so. I would say yes. We are now on the transaction volume that runs in the tens of millions of dollars. So we've been growing quite fast. Hope to cross the 100 million threshold in not too distant future. An average item that is sold on the platform is over 100K, right? The range of items that are being sold is between $20,000 and $3 million, though theoretically there is no upper limit, but this is the middle market where we have been seeing the most activity lately. And the artists whose works are transacted on the platform currently are almost entirely modern and contemporary. But it's not just all Warhols and Basquiat's. There are hot new artists as well. There are emerging artists that are being transacted quite actively also. We publish every week the list of top requests and top inventory items on the platform, so that you can see what they are. But generally, you're right. This is not something where you would go and discover new artists that you might like. This is not for that. It is for people who already know that they would like to either buy or sell something. They have a reasonable amount of understanding of the art market, at least enough to get educated more using our data products. Um, uh, and they are comfortable enough to understand the context of the item being potentially sold, or a request for an item that is being searched by somebody or looked for by somebody, so that from a description they kind of understand more or less what that item is, and so they're ready to go to the next step to find out more information about it. So that is true. I wouldn't say that this is a platform for kind of professional art traders only, right? Obviously, there are lots of them on the platform. It is also a platform for a casual collector, with a large collection who wants to do accession part of it, or who wants to build some of it, who is looking for things that are not available publicly. I think that's the key, right? This is not items that you would find on this platform is things that you will not see, at Sotheby's or Christie's, and also on other digital platforms like Artsy. It would be things that are not available anywhere else. So that's what makes it unique as well.
My understanding is that as a collector, whenever I show up at LiveArt, I can try to use your tools to help establish kind of a value for my portfolio, given what you guys know about market data. And so I can create, I believe, what you call my collection. It strikes me that by helping these users track the value of their portfolios, they're also helping kind of fill in some of the blanks in terms of what's out there and what was paid for it. And it's only helping your algorithms fine-tune those value tools. Am I understanding that right? And as someone is able to kind of help establish what their collection looks like privately, are you then able to come back to these collectors and say, we see that you have a particular artist in your portfolio. We've been seeing increased interest. Are you interested in perhaps offering something from this artist for sale? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, you're absolutely right. We're a data-driven business. Everything we do is powered by data, and I would call it big data. Art, the data set of tens of millions is not, it's not Chat GPT sort of big data, but it is a big enough data to be able to draw some interesting conclusions and help users to tangibly, right, to complete the tasks that they're trying to do, which is usually buy and sell something. So the distinction that we make, that is very firm and clear, and it's very important that it is firm and clear, especially in the minds of our users, is between the public data on the platform that we share with the world and the private data that we manage for the benefit of the users transacting on the platform. So the public data is the other things that we discussed before, right? It's the auction records, it's the AI algorithms that sit on top of them, that give you the current market value of everything that has ever sold, and the price histories, comparables, etc. Right? Market indices, non-transactional signals for emerging artists. So that's the public data. This is for everybody to look at. It's free. There is an app for it. It's very popular. Lots of people, even when they go to auctions, use our app to check prices as they are bidding on sitting in the auction room at Sotheby's or Christie's, considering whether to bid on an item that is being sold there. They use our app to actually check the current market value of that item. So that's a very common use case. So that's the public data. Now, the private data is the supply and demand data. This is what collectors and our trade partners, galleries, dealers are selling at the moment. And that is completely private. It is only used for the benefit of the transacting parties and nobody else. The AI algorithms that perform exact and fuzzy matching on these items, matching artworks and requests, operate on that data, but they don't retain that data or incorporate it in any way into our public data products. They do use it, these algorithms do use it for personalized notifications of the type that you described, so that if you would like, we will notify you when something similar to an item that you own, if you choose to tell us what you own, is becoming available. So you get real-time notifications. It's an omni-channel notification system, so that it will be email or in-app or SMS or WhatsApp, whatever you prefer, on whatever. So it's not to be intrusive, on whatever cadence that you prefer. Prefer it real time, you'll get them in real time. You prefer it once a week as a digest, then that's what's going to happen. Of course, you may miss some opportunities if you set the notification period too long, but some people prefer to do it that way. It really depends on what you're looking to do. So for that part of the data, the private data, there's absolute data privacy. We don't do anything with this data. Currently, we don't even use it to, in an anonymized way or any other way, to feed our price prediction algorithm, even though it would be helpful probably. I actually don't know how helpful, but we just don't do it, just so that this wall between private data and public data is not breached in any use case whatsoever on our app. So this is how we currently deal with it, and I think that it's good practice to do it this way, because I don't want to create any gray area. All right, maybe we share some private data, but not others. It's too disconcerting to people. We would like it to be clean and clear. If it's private, it's private. If it's public, like auction data, etc., then that's available to all.
Well, the public data is probably a little bit more trustworthy also, right? Somebody could abuse the system. They could overstate the price of what they paid for a work. You want to ensure the efficacy of your data, right?
Well, there is that. Of course, like for instance, just for the sake of an argument, you would never use gallery list prices in any algorithm, because those are just arbitrary numbers, right? You would have to get to the actual transacted values, transacted prices, and those are, of course, difficult to come by. But even if we did, we wouldn't, we just wouldn't use them. There's plenty of data available, especially for the artists that we trade most often, which are, as you noted earlier, kind of high liquidity artists. There's plenty of data available in the public market and the auction market to run the algorithms that we run. There are really two different families of algorithms, AI algorithms, that we employ. One is for price prediction, indexing of artists, art movements, the art market as a whole. So that's one. And then matching, which is, of course, very important to our business, is the other. And that's also quite involved. I mentioned fuzzy matching, for instance, right? Before we talked about just matching artists to artists, right? So if you have an artist with an artwork by a particular artist with certain characteristics, it will be matched to another artwork by the same artist with similar characteristics. That's the easy problem. But what about similar artworks? Similar in the sense that they would look similar to somebody who is looking for something, right? So not similar in the art historical sense, but similar from the e-commerce and trading party sense. So our algorithms do that too. So we are starting to get quite sophisticated about that, using all sorts of AI techniques, not just rule-based matching, but also collaborative filtering and other things.
Back there, you made a distinction in the gallery or the dealer world about a list or stated price versus what it winds up transacting for. In the LiveArt transaction, in this peer-to-peer marketplace, does there wind up being an eventual negotiation, between the two parties? I mean, is there a point where there's kind of a negotiation, or is it a list price, and that list price is take it or leave it?
It's a negotiation. So we have a piece of technology. Really, if you were to go to LiveArt.io and looked at our trading floor, you just see the tip of the iceberg. This is just the things that that people choose to list publicly. There is all there's a whole 90% of the iceberg that you do not see, and that's things that that are these kind of fuzzy wishes that the inventory may be available, or the wishes may have been implicitly stated by the users of our various products, but they're not explicitly listed, right? So that is also information that is used in matching. So the prices that a deal is transacted in, the actual price that ends up being negotiated, that happens in what we call the deal room, which is another piece of technology that you wouldn't see just on the website, but you would if you start the purchasing process, right? If you start this interest if you express interest in an item, or you have an item that corresponds to a listed wish or a listed request, you start engaging with the buyer or seller, the counterparty, depending on the use case. And then this incremental reveal process that I described earlier is going to start happening. And all of that happens in what we call a deal room. So then the next step in that deal room is the actual price negotiation. Now, the two parties continue to be anonymous during the negotiation. It's this parameterized negotiation with bids and counter bids. And there could be multiple potential bidders, negotiating parties. They're not bidders because it's not an auction. Mm-hmm. It's a negotiation. But one seller could be negotiating with multiple potential buyers at the same time. And it's a multi-parameter negotiation. So it's not just about the price. It's also about other parameters that may be important to the buyer, like location of the item. Obviously, the condition of the item is stated by the seller, and then later will be checked during the fulfillment process. So that negotiation happens in the deal room, and the outcome of that is an agreed, like this, the seller selects which buyer is going to be the winner, the one that's actually going to buy the item. They will agree on the price. The seller will state the conditions of sale and the stated condition of the item. And at that point, the deal is considered to be committed, but it's not yet closed, right? Because it's only going to be closed subject to the condition authenticity check that will happen when the item arrives into one of our clearinghouse facilities.
I know that Web3 is a part of your business. What role does Web3 play in the future of LiveArt? Because the Web3 space, that's a distinctly different customer base market versus the traditional art world. How do you see bridging those two communities?
Well, it's a huge question. And I think that, Web3, generally speaking, and with respect to the art market, and also I think generally speaking, it's a long game. The world is moving in that direction, and it will eventually arrive there. We don't know when, nobody does. But it's, either it will be something that revolutionizes everything, just the way that we conduct business in more decentralized way, more trusted way, more peer-to-peer way, which interestingly enough is very much analogous to how we have built our trading floor, except it's not built on Web3 technologies, but conceptually it's actually very well aligned with how Web3 operates. So either it's going to be this revolution, or it's going to be the next turn of the technology spiral, right? Just like Web1 became Web2, sort of started in a very decentralized way and then became more centralized by the Facebooks and the Googles and Microsofts. And so the same may happen to Web3. It may get more centralized over time, and also more user-friendly, or it may not. Nobody knows. What is clear is that it's going to happen in some form, either as an iterative technology development, or as something that just revolutionizes everything, or something in between.
Sure.
So where it touches the art market specifically is that artists, and not just artists, but also foundations, estates, and others, are really interested in this new medium, right? They're interested in this new medium for many reasons, right? The first reason is that, well, an artist is always interested in a new medium that gives new creative possibilities that are not possible in other media, like for instance, generative art or algorithmic art. All of these things that weren't possible before are now possible, and artists like to explore the new media. There are also economic reasons for artists to get in this new medium. They get to keep a higher percentage of the primary sale, and also the complete revolution from the artist perspective. They also get resale royalties on the secondary sale, enabled by the smart contracts, in Web3, which is something that the artists have been trying to get for a long time, but really couldn't. And they also get access to new audiences, right? And why the new audiences coming on board? Well, that's an interesting story, which I think is kind of underappreciated by the art market at large. And I wish people realized what's really happening. What's happening is that big brands, big consumer brands, luxury brands, fashion brands, entertainment brands, sports brands are all doing Web3 projects,
Right.
just because it's what you do these days. But what's interesting is that as they do Web3 projects, usually they need some kind of a visual components, because usually these are NFT projects, and so they need content. They need visual component. Where does the visual component come from? What may come from brand assets like Mickey Mouse, etc. And sometimes it does, but more often than not, it actually comes from art, right? Those brands engage with artists. They're looking for artists, both digital and traditional artists who are dipping their toes into the digital medium. And so the brands are bringing art to mainstream consumers, to the consumers of the brands, right? To the Taco Bell consumers and the Burger King consumers and the Burberry consumers and the Gucci consumers, like the consumers that don't normally engage with art as much as perhaps other market segments. And suddenly art is going there. So it's a revolutionary moment for art. If this trend continues, which it certainly appears to continue unabated, art is now being brought to audiences suddenly, right? It's like we always thought that we would, democratize art and make it more available and so on. And there have been, over the last few years, some movements in that direction that have been somewhat successful with all those online portals that let you discover art easily. But nothing like this. With Web3, art is actively being brought to mainstream consumers by brands doing Web3 projects. And that dynamics is, it is materially increasing the size of the art market. At the peak of the NFT boom, if you look at the numbers, it basically doubled the art market from $65 billion to 150. If you look at the art NFTs that were sold, at the peak of this Web3 revolution. Now it's more like, say 20% increase in the art market, which is still very significant. So that's pretty awesome, right? So basically, the supply side, the artists want to go there into Web3. On the demand side, brands are bringing new audiences to art in this new digital format that is available through the Web3 projects. And then there is market operations. There are all these things that, permanence on blockchain, title registries, fractionalization that is now possible, tokenization, which is basically trading art and other objects without actually moving them around, just by tokenizing them and trading the tokens. All of those logistical things, the market operation things that essentially increase market liquidity. So you have increased supply because artists want to do more projects in this new medium, increased demand because brands are bringing new audiences to art through this new medium, and increased liquidity through simplified and enhanced market operations that blockchain enables. So put it all together, and you really have what potentially is an inflection point in the art market. It's just going to grow larger, significantly larger, and in 5 years we may not recognize it relative to where it is today. Now, inflection points, you can only assess them in hindsight, so we don't know. But it certainly could be an inflection point, and there is a lot of evidence that points in that direction. So that's that's our theory of operation there. And from where we are, which is really in the art world establishment, dealing with established artists, with mostly traditional artists, we took it as our main goal is helping these artists to go to Web3 and bridge them into these new Web3 audiences and help them to take this, what they're doing, their artistic practice, to those Web3 audiences in a Web3 native ways, sometimes in conjunction with brands, right, doing a joint project with a brand, and sometimes directly to Web3 audiences through our own mechanisms and community building.
Particularly on the traditional art world side, it seems like the logical thing is to find a way to utilize this new medium for these artists that maybe I wouldn't have access to be able to buy a particular work from this artist because they traditionally do museum installations. But now I can buy something that is kind of a digital interpretation of their work. And, now I have access to their work in a way that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise. That seems pretty logical from the traditional collector's perspective. But, it seems like it would be a little bit harder to roll that boulder up the hill for the person that has entered the Web3 space, the crypto bro, the person that's been trading NFTs as collectibles, trying to pull them into the world of a traditional art market. It seems like that would be a tougher transition given how the community building occurs in the Web3 world. Can you kind of talk about how you have to market to those two communities in a different way?
Well, first of all, virtually all of our Web3 art NFT buyers are Web3 degens, bros, as you call them. So virtually all. There is some crossover into buyers of traditional art who are sort of also starting to collect digital art and art NFTs, but that crossover is very small so far. I expect it to increase over time, but for now it's very small. So it has to be right. You have to make sure that to be successful in bringing traditional artists to Web3 audiences, that the Web3 audiences identify with this product that they're buying on their own terms. So, and this is ironically where our data product comes in. So our data, this whole, not just this data product, but our data-driven mentality comes in. So if you get into the head of a Web3 buyer, right, a Web3 collector, what are they looking for? They're looking for, well, some of them are speculators, just looking to buy and sell, and just make the money on the spread. But there is a subset, which is not insignificant, blue chip collectors of NFT, just art and other NFT types, who are looking for investment grade works, things that they can hold, things that they believe are going to grow in value, things that have utilities in addition to the value, but things that just from the economic perspective will perform well over time. And so that is where we come in with our data approach and with our data analytics hat on. So what we do is we use our art analytics product to design and price our NFT projects in a way that extends the artist's traditional market and ensures that the artist's NFT prices are aligned with the artist's market. So we know the artist market, right? We have an index for every artist. We know all the highs and lows, all the auction results, the auction records of every artist. So what's important is to price the NFT project of that artist in line with his or her market. If it's priced too high, well, it's kind of an outlier. If it's priced too low, it damages the market. So from the artist's perspective, it's important that the NFT project is priced in line with the market, which is quite, an involved process which we go through because the market consists of it depends on the artist. The artist may have uniques and editions and multiples and works on paper and whatever, and all of these have different price points, and those price points have relevance to different kinds of NFT benchmarks. So, maybe an NFT collection would be in its aggregate price similar to the artist's top auction results for unique paintings, just for sake of illustration. And each individual NFT may be benchmarked to the artist's multiples of works on paper, but then together it all has to, the whole pricing scheme has to hang together in the context of that artist's current market, right? So this way, NFT projects are perceived by the collector community as investment-grade works, right, that have an enduring value rather than being a speculative asset. And basically, because of our deep understanding of the art world and how the art world operates and the art market data, artists trust us to take them to Web3 in a proper way that advances the existing market and builds them these new collector audiences. And these new collector audiences, the Web3 audiences, see, because we can prove it to them, and they tend to be very quantitative, right? They love looking at the graphs and charts, unlike your traditional collectors. But Web3 collectors love graphs and charts. So they look at those graphs and charts and they see that, it's not a speculative asset because it's benchmarked to this artist's market, traditional market, and here is how it fits. So if you believe in that artist and if you believe in his or her traditional market, then you can extend that trust into the NFTs, and the NFTs designed and marketed in this way are expected to perform in line with the artist's overall market. So that's our methodology. That's how we do it. That's how we tie it together with our traditional art business, really providing the same artists, using the same processes that we use on our Web3 business and extending them to Web3.
As LiveArt continues to grow and this market continues to change, do you think that LiveArt as a brand name will continue to gain traction, or do you feel like you will become sort of an engine underlying transactions at all these different parts of the ecosystem? Will you be kind of an unseen, white-labeled part of an offering within a gallery or dealer community or a Web3 community? Or do you feel like the LiveArt name is going to be established and continue to build a brand there? How do you see that playing out?
Well, that's a great question, right? It's a strategic question for the business. And our thinking, well, of course, we started out the company like all entrepreneurs do, guns blazing and say there's clearly an open space to build the next art business of the Sotheby's Christie size, because this has a different, it fills a niche that is not fulfilled. This peer-to-peer trading, a different way of conceptualizing art trading that is an open field that is not touched by anybody else, but the demand for it exists. And to an extent, we certainly still believe that. What changed, however, over the last, I would say, 6 months or so, is we noticed that many of the transactors on our network are not just peer-to-peer, just collectors. But at least on one side of the transaction, there is a trade partner, right? There is a gallery, dealer, or an auction house specialist, like in their private sales practice. So that is happening more and more. And it's hard to predict if this is something that will continue to coexist with our peer-to-peer business, or that will become the business, in which case we will become this kind of mega broker that, in a good way, that does these, two-sided, anonymous, blind, double-blind, data-driven kind of matches across the players in the industry, both individual collectors and trade. So we're still not sure which way it's going to go. That's the fun of building a startup. Sometimes the market essentially takes you in the direction that you perhaps did not fully appreciate starting out. That's normal. This is my 5th startup. Pretty much every single one before that had an aspect of this kind of a surprise. development. So we'll see. We'll see. I think I would love to become that engine. I think it would be very beneficial for the art markets to have that. I think it's missing now. I think that every gallery, every dealer is an island that has access to a very limited amount of inventory and a very limited amount of demand, basically collectors who follow that gallery or dealer. I think that the market would expand dramatically in terms of its liquidity if there is this sort of central clearinghouse, but it has to play by the rules of the market, which is privacy, which is not burning the items, which is trust, all of the things that we talked about before, which we have, right? So I think that this is very much a viable potential future direction. For now, we are running, the peer-to-peer art exchange, and that will continue to be the case for the foreseeable future. But I think the possibility that you brought up is very real, and we've been thinking about it. So being that engine behind the scenes for the art market that plays and that helps everybody out essentially, and increases the liquidity in the art market at marginal incremental cost, would be awesome.
It's really interesting. In your response there, you were talking about liquidity, and the more we have this conversation, the more I think about there was this period, 10, 15 years ago, where people were starting up art funds. We think today, and we throw around more terms like fractionalization and talk about companies like Masterworks. But people were creating these funds, basically run it like a venture fund, bundle capital, acquire a portfolio, have a timeline, and then, sell off the portfolio given a particular time frame, and, trying to capitalize on what we see as the growth in the value of art assets. But those art funds always had one really big problem, and that was liquidity. Trying to time that liquidation of the portfolio, trying to not flood the market. The fact that one of your only real options is going to an auction community to try to liquidate that portfolio was a problem. And, what I'm hearing from you in terms of the benefits and features of your platform really seem to answer a lot of those traditional issues around liquidity. And it seems like it might free up that concept of art funds. Is that a consideration, or am I just thinking randomly here?
Well, I don't know how you got a hold of our strategic documents, internal documents, but somehow you're just almost reading away, from them. So yes, of course. Look, it's a logical extension of what we're doing, right? Because we have the vertical integration of acquisition and liquidation, right? Liquidity. So we buy and we sell. We don't have to go outside to auctions or whatever and incur those 27% fees on each, combined on two sides, which obviously make the economics of tokenization, fractionalization, fractional ownership that much more difficult. So if you don't have to do that, right? If you have your own proprietary buying and selling that already exists, then yes, fractionalization, tokenization becomes economically attractive. And all sorts of new models become possible, right? Can traders who sell or who transact on our platform, instead of selling the entire item, kind of sell a fraction of it and then retain some interest in it? Can there be a secondary market in the shares that have been fractionalized? Where is that secondary market going to be active? Is it going to be the traditional Web 2 secondary market, or is it going to be tokenized in a Web 3 way, and it will be ERC20 tokens that represent, or NFTs like Particle that represent that trading? So there are a lot of possibilities there, And there's quite a zoo of possibilities, actually. And the constraints on those possibilities currently, for the most part, are regulatory, right? So it's like some of these things are legal in some places, not legal in others, and completely unknown. So basically, the laws haven't been written yet in most cases. So the navigating that legal complexity over the next couple of years, I think, is what will be needed in order to bring such ideas to actual fruition, right, in the real world, in the market. But structurally, I believe we are perfectly set up to do it because we have this vertically integrated structure for buying and selling, for acquisition and for liquidation and for liquidity. And we have the Web3 platform that's attached to it, and we have the Web3 community that could potentially be the community that is most interested in owning a piece of a masterpiece without actually buying the masterpiece, because that's sort of like very much their mindset, right? So that community likes, precisely those kinds of value propositions. Especially if those NFTs that represent fractional ownership also have some utility in the Web3 world, which of course they would in real life, right? Access to exhibitions, access to various IRL events, etc. So there is clearly an offering there. Actually, probably there are multiple offerings. But I think negotiating the legal complexities of it in the regulatory landscape that is currently quite thorny is the first step to get there.
There are still questions in the Web3 world that haven't been answered around. I remember at a gallery event speaking to a couple of lawyers in the Web3 space that were convinced that Bored Ape Yacht Club, had themselves a securities issue in terms of what their offering was and how it was only a matter of time before the SEC started to raise questions. So, there's definitely questions around where do you butt up against, what here in the U.S. is, securities laws, right? And so,
yeah, which other countries don't have that issue. Some countries do, of course, some don't. So there are some places in the world where you can do it, some places where you can't. But then it becomes a logistical nightmare, right? Figuring out where you can fractionalize, where you can sell, and the secondary market fractional shares do, which kind of fractures the business. So especially for a startup, that's not a good environment. Startups, we kind of have to be built for scale, and doing something that is so fractured is difficult.
Boris, I feel like I could talk to you for a whole other hour and, unlock ideas about where these two worlds are bridging and where they're headed, and just what's on the cutting edge of fine art and technology, and enabling a more dynamic and nimble marketplace that can encourage growth, right? I appreciate you sitting down with me today to talk about LiveArt's role in all of that.
No, well, thanks for the invitation. Really enjoyed it, and looking forward to coming onto your podcast in a couple of years to talk about how the art market has changed, which I'm sure it will, be that Web3 or whatever will make that change happen. I think that it's a safe bet that in a couple of years it's going to be quite a different market.
That's all the time we have for this week. You've been listening to ArtSense. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. If you've enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. And while you're there, please rate the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback is the key to other folks finding us. And if you'd like to see images related to the conversation, read the transcript, and find other bonus features, you can go to cambia.art and click on the podcast tab. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can email me at craig@cambia.art. Thanks for listening.